So if I don't have experience with it, how can I write about something I don't know, right? Yeah, I have, this is, how many pages? Just one of 7.
Okay, well, hold on now. I have 6 mini pages, all right? I'm going to do Post-its next time, then I'll look like a real winner.
Well, I mean, you know, like I said, I had to I went through a little bit of the history, and then I did it, broke it down by year, right? Because that's kind of important to know when
They're
it
going to be
happened.
like, why didn't you do your paper? I was doing my podcast.
That I did. This didn't work. Oh, God. And it was, a little confusing, because there were these people that came, and then somebody else came with supplies, and it's a lot like the fucking Donner Party all over
And that's
again.
what I was thinking. This thing was ill-fated. We should probably just start and stop talking about it.
We probably should. I think I'm recording anyway, so it really doesn't matter. But let me go back to the first page, because that would probably help. All right. I guess, I should put it maybe there. I mean, I could sort of read it.
That's kind of... Maybe you could magnify the screen. You know how...
What am I, 90?
Well, it's far.
Let's see.
There you are.
Yeah, there's just more scrolling. I'll bring it a little closer, because I need to be able to at least get to the scroll. Oh, fuck you! Come on, you cock knocker.
That's a new one.
You've never heard that before?
No! Titty knocker, I've heard.
No, never heard that one. All right. So, shall we start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, welcome to the latest installment of Grave Crimes podcast, video, shit, whatever. It's Sunday. There's a hockey game on. See.
She's going to teach me about hockey.
I am, eventually. We're going to get there.
We will get there.
And it's 10:58 in the morning, and I was standing online at 7-Eleven buying our drink for today.
We didn't do a cocktail because it's early.
Well, not only
that's
is it-
what we've done early.
Yeah, we've done early. That's not the problem. The problem is that for the time period, so today we're doing Roanoke Island, which is all about this lost colony and all that, and it's from 1500s.
Yeah.
So they weren't really drinking,
They were
rum,
drinking
maybe.
whiskey, which
Whiskey.
she's so done with.
It's not that I'm even done with it. I brought it, but there's just something about drinking whiskey at 11 a.m. on a Sunday, straight whiskey, not mixed in anything. And that wasn't even the primary drink at the time. It was ciders and ales and things like that. So we opted to go the ale route.
And we're drinking pee. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I mean, it does. To be fair, it really does. Yes. I'm not really an ale person either, so...
I like ale.
I mean, I'll drink this over, absinthe.
Well. Yeah.
So, cheers!
Cheers.
Yay.
I'm going to get the hiccups.
Oh, goody. That should be fun. But, I'm standing online at 7-Eleven grabbing this, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, unless we tell people what time of day it is, it could be 5 o'clock on a Friday and they wouldn't know the fucking difference.
Somewhere.
It is.
This is a blue moon, yes?
It is.
Blue moon.
Blue moon.
Blue
Not that we're endorsing any particular ale company. Just in case, later I vomit on camera. I don't want them to be that's really poor advertising. Anyway, moving right along. Oh, God.
There is a bug going around. I had multiple children projectile vomit this week, and the teachers, obviously, they have to clean it up. But I've been there. I've cleaned plenty of children's fluids and God knows what. Yeah. But I just crack up. I laugh when kids projectile vomit. I don't know why. They always look shocked and terrified. They're like, ah!
I'm sure they are.
And I just
It's the Exorcist kind of shit. You should have that on automatic play when they do that.
So bad.
Oh my God. Come and clean it up dressed as Reagan. Oh God.
Oh dear.
So, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, Roanoke artichoke.
Yeah.
So
and also I'm kind of pissed.
Why?
Because I couldn't find that other ale thing.
Oh, that you were sending me, yeah.
Yeah. So I found. So as we get into it, you'll hear about this. Well, it was called Croatoan,
yeah.
right? Which is now Hatteras.
Right.
So I found a beer ale thing that actually was called Croatoan, except I couldn't find any place to buy it. So that was disappointing. Anyway.
Not even the distributors, like the big...
No. I did a search for find
That's
this near me,
strange.
and there was
that's weird.
nothing. Mm-mm. So, I guess we should get started.
I mean, I have to say, I was a little disappointed when I did the research that it was not as mysterious as I thought it was.
Yeah, there's a lot of very plausible explanations for the disappearance. And I didn't, I thought that there was, constant contact.
Right.
Not the website. And that it was they all just suddenly were gone.
Right. That's kind of, I thought it was a little more successful, and then they just they came back and they were just gone. It wasn't, I mean, this was like a failing colony from the get-go.
Yeah.
I mean, it was shit.
And the person, the 17th person who was assigned to actually settle this area, was gone for 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot going on in the world at that time. They had the Spanish War.
Yeah, the Spanish Anglo
War. And there was a lot of fights amongst the colonies, and there was stuff going on in England, and a lot of raiding in the sea, and there was a lot of bullshit going on.
Yes, which I have in here a little bit.
Me too.
Just a little bit.
No,
because truthfully, if we had really delved into the whole process and how it all went down,
right,
this could have been a multi-part.
And a lot of times they got there, but then they had to leave because of issues with the ships. Because honestly, if you even know anything about the area, it's very hurricane prone, and it's not a great sailing area. So there's a lot of stuff that happened.
Yeah, if you look, even if you look at the map, right? So there's the main coast of the Carolinas, or what is now the Carolinas, and then they're
Carolina.
I've driven through it, and I've also gone to south of the border, but that doesn't really count. Actually, that's a lie. What am I talking about? I was there for work for a month.
Okay.
But I didn't get to actually but I didn't visit a whole lot of places.
I'd like to go. I'd like to go there.
I would too.
Yeah.
I'd like to go to the islands. I wouldn't mind going to Myrtle Beach and all that kind of stuff. But where the islands are situated, right? So you would the ships would have to potentially go between the mainland and the island, and that's always just a shit show.
Yep.
As well. So it's kind of they made a couple of different efforts.
The goal was to establish a permanent English settlement in the area,
right,
because the French had settlements down on I think Louisiana and stuff, and the Spanish totally controlled Florida and all that good stuff. So the English wanted to get in on this,
of course,
new land.
Yeah. And it's interesting because most people don't realize this, but St. Augustine is actually the oldest city in the United States.
Yes, it is, and I know you've been there.
Yes,
and I want to go there.
But it's not recognized as such because it's Spanish settled, not English settled. Because if it's not English, then it's shit.
Doesn't count.
Right? No, I don't believe. Well, first of all, let's start with the fact that none of those people were the first of anything, because there were people here. There are human beings here, which is why they're called native, because they were already the fuck here.
Right.
Anyway, so the first attempt was, and this is kind of important, it was Sir Walter Raleigh, and he made he was the one who had the first intentions of coming here and settling, and that's important because now Raleigh, North Carolina, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then that was in 1583, and apparently that expedition was supposed to be led by Sir Humphrey Gilbert, but he was lost at sea when he was traveling back to England. And I think also the first expeditions were mostly men and mostly they were military, if you want to call it that,
It was kind of almost like scouting.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they came back 2 years later in 1585, and this was when they actually appointed a governor, and that was Ralph Lane. But again, due to lack of supplies and the tribe disagreements and all that kind of stuff, they had to abandon it. And what's interesting is, so apparently Sir Richard Grenville, also Greenville, right? So you can see where all the names are coming into play here. He was supposed to be showing up with a supply run, and he was late. So Ralph Lane goes, fuck this shit, I'm out of here. He leaves. They return to England in 1586, and then of course 2 weeks after that is when Grenville shows up.
Yeah, and I mean, if you really think about it, there was no way, unless someone sends an envoy, there's no way to communicate.
Right.
So you're just kind of waiting, looking at the sea every day, are they here yet? I'm fucking hungry.
Talk about patience and shit, right? You had to be super patient.
Yeah.
with that one, they actually did leave a small group of men behind.
Yeah.
To protect the claim, as it were. Now, in 1587, on January 7th, John White was appointed governor, and he had 12 assistants to colonize and I thought this was really funny, they spelled it city, C-I-T-T-I-E.
Well, that might be the English.
Yeah, of course it is, but I still think it's just funny. It just looked cute. So that was in Chesapeake Bay. At that point, that was when 115 people actually agreed to join this party of lunatics. And that also included White's daughter, Eleanor. And her husband, and this is with his names, I mean, Eleanor's easy. And Ananias Dare was her husband. Apparently they were mostly middle-class Londoners who were hoping to become landed gentry, which I had to look up.
Did you see?
Maybe. I saw a lot of things.
Did you see the issue with the missing cup? That one of the reasons they had issues with the natives was because a silver cup went missing.
Oh, please.
And they thought that they stole it, like a native stole it, so they went and like burned down their entire village.
What the fuck are you doing? How is, explain to me, first of all, I understand that silver, it had a different meaning and different, whatever, back then, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're literally starting a war, essentially, over a silver cup that you're using in a colony that doesn't even have, formal homes, right? You're living in hovels, and you're worried about a silver cup. Talk about pretentious and whatever.
And so, I mean, obviously that was, a big strike against, the English with the natives, but also, I think they thought the English were cursed because when they were helping them, giving them corn and showing them all these things, they would keep getting sick. And it was annihilating all these villages because the English had disease.
Yes.
Like smallpox and the flu.
Yeah. So not only did we come here and take their shit, but
and ruin everything.
We either killed them, outwardly killed them, or we killed them by proxy of...
Yeah. And there's, after the first or second... I don't want to say settlement, scouting people went back to England. They said that Secotans? I should know this. We live on Long Island. There's 1,000 native names.
Yeah, the Secotan. Sure. We'll go with that one.
Yeah. They said they were very friendly and very hospitable and very willing to help.
Yeah.
That was very poor on their part. Because it totally...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, we do this and we think, oh, but we're better than them. But anyway, so being what's called a landed gentry, basically, because I looked it up. I knew the term.
Like a lord and lady and having
owning property, and then it's basically being a landlord.
It's medieval, yeah. It's like the medieval thing. You're a lord, lady, and then you have people on your property that work it for you.
Right. So they thought that if they came here to this new world,
they
would
could elevate
their status.
Yes.
Because they would be the first landlords of the area and all of that crap. So this is why knowing some of the previous expeditions is important, because apparently when White came back, he brought Mateo and for God's sake, Toway, Towye. I can't.
Yeah, it looks like Toway.
We'll go with that. And they were from the Croatoan or Croatan?
Croatoan.
Because I've seen both.
Well, I'm going to say Croatoan. It's funner to say.
Yes, it is. But they were from that tribe. And they had originally evacuated with Lane when he left, a year prior. So they did make friends, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I guess they figured, it's better to be friends with the enemy than...
Which, there's no reason that they should have been the enemy.
Yeah, well...
these people know the land.
Nobody should have been the enemy. I
mean,
right.
They looked at them, obviously, as
other than being invaders.
Well, I'm sorry, the white people looked at the natives as they were animals.
Yeah.
And they weren't Christian, but if anything, they knew the land. They knew how to farm it. They
had a deeper respect for the land.
Oh my God.
It wasn't they were oh, we have to build this huge home. They actually were very much in tune with nature and the land and the place that they lived. And rather than destroy it, they learned to, or they
worked with it.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll get into that topic. So that this January 7th was when they decided they were going to come back, right? So they didn't actually leave until May 8th of 1587. And they had 3 ships. The flagship Lion, which was captained by White, with Simon Fernandez as master and pilot, a flyboat, and a full-rigged pinnace. I looked these up because, one is basically like a running ship, so they could take people from the main ship to the land, and one was, like, more military setup and guns and all that bullshit. So, remember, May 8th, they leave. They don't actually get to the Croton Island until July 22nd, which, honestly, was a lot quicker than I thought. I mean, in the grand scheme of things. Considering you're not talking about, like, a cruise ship with engines and shit, right? It's oars, sails.
If you catch the wind, then
right.
Yeah.
So the flagship and the pinnace, am I saying that? That just sounds dirty.
Where?
Pinnace.
Yeah.
It just sounds wrong.
Unless
like,
you want
not
to be
wrong,
like Italian, like panache.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's how it's pronounced, though. Remember, they were English.
The panache.
They arrive at Croton Island, and the plan was for White to take 40 men to Roanoke, which is a separate island. And they were going to consult with Grenville's men at Lane's encampment and then continue to Chesapeake Bay. However, apparently Fernandez told one of his men to tell them, no, just leave all the colonists on Roanoke Island, which is how they ended up being there. And then, so the next day, White goes to where Grenville's men were, but that was abandoned as well.
Yeah.
I don't know, did they ever actually find that? I thought this was really funny, though, too, because they said that the fort was dismantled and the houses were vacant and overgrown with melons.
Melons, yes. I guess that's
I just was cracking up. So they said there was no sign of the men except for some human bones that White believed were the remains of one of Grenville's men likely killed by Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, who knows? Like, they could have had some kind of argument. I wasn't there, I don't know. Can't take sides, I suppose. So then July 25th, the flyboat arrives with the remaining colonists shortly after colonist George Howe is killed by a Native American while searching for crabs at Albemarle Sound.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I needed to know more information about this. Was the native mad that he was searching for crabs? Like, was there an altercation?
I think by that point, it just was not safe for the colonists to be in that area because I think the relations between the colonists and the natives were so poor.
Yeah.
That they just saw
they saw white man and just said,
they're like they're not trustworthy. Yeah, like at this point they can't be here. So and I know that the last type of colonists with the men, women, and children that were there, there weren't any military. It was literally just like.
Well, he had some, but not a large.
But they may not have known that.
Military.
Yeah, they may not have known that.
Right.
So they probably just saw them and were like, nope, you gotta go.
I just feel bad. Like, I mean, I know that they weren't right for, invading, because I feel like that was kind of screwed up, but I understand it. But I also just feel bad because, like, the poor guy's just searching for crabs and something to eat, and along comes someone. And
I mean, as far as who knew if
there could have been an altercation.
Yeah, and I know that I had found that the colonists did try to negotiate with them. Apparently, it didn't work though. So like,
and you have language barriers too, so that doesn't help anything.
There was language barriers, but I'm sure too that they were just done. I know that there was like small raids on the villages, and they killed one of their like chiefs. Like they took him and killed him.
That's not really a good way to make friends.
No. When the people came back, like the English came back, they did see smoke in like the villages.
Yes.
Like the night before.
So I think that's actually
later.
Yeah. Because there's, again, it's like I said to you before we started recording, it's almost like the Donner Party.
Yeah.
Right? Because they would leave for supplies and come back and go and come back and all this, right?
Yeah.
So to your point about trying to like do negotiating, apparently that one native Menteo was one of the ones that was trying to like mediate and help for there to be calmness. So August 27th, now he hasn't been there that long, right? So he got there in May. Now he leaves in August to go back for supplies. So you got to figure that's a 2 month
trip. They go
trip.
back and forth a lot. That's a long trip.
It is. But prior to them leaving, they had talked about potentially moving from from Roanoke Island to Croatoan Island, which is about 50 miles away. Because I think maybe for safety purposes or whatever. And so November 5th, White gets back to England. But this was when news of the Spanish Armada mobilizing had become known to Queen Elizabeth. And she basically said, yeah, any ships that we can use, or we're going to use, and nobody's going anywhere. So now we're into 1588. Apparently 2 ships, the Brave and Roe, were deemed unsuitable for combat, and White was given permission to take them to Roanoke. Except they leave England, and the captains of those 2 ships decide that they want to try and plunder, right? Because they're just not happy just going somewhere. They want to improve their profits. So they try to capture a couple of Spanish ships. And then, talk about irony, in May, their ships were attacked by French pirates near Morocco. Apparently, 24 crew members died, and the supplies for Roanoke were looted. So now they got to go back to England.
And explain themselves.
Yes. It's just one shit show after another. And then in August, the Spanish Armada is defeated. However, the Queen maintains the ban on ships leaving England because now she wants to do a counter armada. Because, let's just keep fighting. And this is, now it's 1589 at this point. He doesn't get permission to leave until 1590. So now they've been in the U.S., America, for 3 years with nothing. They were, I would imagine, expecting, 4 or 5 months. Figure 2 months back.
Nothing and poor relations with the natives. I mean, who knows what happened during that 3-year period? Maybe things improved. Maybe they got bad again. Maybe they improved. Like, who knows? Because that's kind of what it seemed like it was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So, he brings 2 ships finally back, the Hopewell and Moonlight, which I like those names. Oh, sorry, that's really relative. So August 12th, the ships anchor at Croatoan Island, but White doesn't bother to even, try to make contact with them. I guess he figured, why should I? I don't know what the hell his point was. So he sees smoke coming from Roanoke Island. And then, that was the 15th. And then on the 16th, he sees smoke coming from the southern end of Croatoan Island. That they actually investigated. They didn't find anything. And then August 17th, after, apparently it took them quite a while to try to cross Pimlico Sound because of the issues with the water and the currents and all that bullshit. Now they see another fire on the north end of Roanoke Island, and they try to get there, but by the time they get close enough, it's dark and they don't want to...
Right, they don't want to risk going in.
That wouldn't have...
Which to me either says they're, the settlers were on the move, or maybe it was, the natives scouting. I don't...
Right.
Maybe they saw the ships. I don't really know.
Yeah, it's interesting that... And it's in 2 different places. So Croatoan is about 50 miles from Roanoke. So clearly there's people in both places. Just... whatever. So August 18th, they finally make landfall. And they did see fresh tracks in the sand. But they don't actually find anyone. So this is what was kind of interesting, right? So they find the letters C-R-O carved into a tree. And then they finally get back to where the colony was, and they discovered that a fortified fence was put up.
Right, which says that things probably were not going too well.
Right.
Yeah.
And apparently on the fence was carved, the full word Croatoan. And they thought that maybe, given the fact that they had talked about moving to Croatoan prior to White's departure 3 years prior, they thought that maybe, that was what those writings meant.
Yeah, and apparently if there was, a distress, they were supposed to carve in, a cross pate in there.
Which I also looked up. That's
one, the big boxy cross type of thing. Yeah.
Yep. So it's, wider at the top, and then it narrows toward the middle. And they called it a secret token. Okay.
But he said the homes were dismantled and the belongings were gone. So it doesn't, it almost looks like, and they had time to carve into the fence, so it does look like they kind of just took their stuff and went.
Right, and then it's possible because I also found that one of his trunks that he had buried was actually dug up.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of it could have been somebody that knew where he had buried it, right? It could also have been that just somebody happened upon us. Like, they could have left, and then the natives from the area just took whatever was left behind.
True.
So they, where am I? I've already lost my place. Several large trunks, including 3 of White's, have been dug up and looted. The colony's boats were gone. So I guess they had left behind some kind of... They didn't really mention that.
Maybe like rowboats. I can't imagine.
Like canoe.
Yeah.
Canoe. So the plan was to go back to the Hopewell, and then they were going to sail to Croton the next day. But apparently Hopewell's anchor cable snapped.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they only had one. So with the likelihood of shipwreck, they could not continue the search. The Moonlight returned to England, and Hopewell's plan was, like, they kind of, like, made a compromise with him, because obviously he wanted to stay. His wife and daughter were there. So what they did was they said, okay, we'll spend the winter in the Caribbean. Then they would return to Roanoke in the spring of 1591. But that didn't work out either, because they were blown off course, and then they attempted to stop for supplies in the Azores. Is that
Azores?
The Azores, whatever. That just sounds weird. But they weren't able to make landfall there either.
Yeah.
So they had to change course again. They returned to England, and they didn't actually get back to England until October of 1590. There were a lot of subsequent searches, like up through like present day, pretty much.
But it was kind of late at that point.
Yeah. So like they didn't find any, and that's the thing, they didn't find any human remains.
Right.
So it's not like you could say clearly they were attacked.
I mean, they very well could have kept going.
They could have. They could have gone to Croton. They could have ended up on the mainland.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
because if they were getting battered by storms over the course of 3 years.
Yeah, storms, or again, you know, in the like Native Americans had like a network basically of where they would meet up, and they would have like tribal meetings, and like they, I don't even want to use the word envoy, but yeah, they would send like, they would have like
messengers almost.
Yeah, and so maybe they sent like, you know, these white people are in your area now, don't trust them. Maybe they've been run out of every area. Maybe they went all the way north.
Yeah. What I thought was also interesting was part of the reason why they were so adamant about being there is they literally thought that like the Pacific was like on the other side of Virginia. And it's like, oh no, honey. You have a ways to go before you get to the Pacific. Like, what did they think it looked like?
I guess they would never know. I mean, how could they know, really?
But like to have that kind of assumption, right?
Yeah.
I feel like
they probably just saw water and were like, oh, it's that easy.
Yeah. No. We know what happens when you try to cross the entire United States of America.
See Donner Party.
Reference.
Yeah.
So the first search party after they left was from 1595 to 1602, and I thought this was kind of interesting because it was Walter Raleigh that was like initiating the searches. It wasn't necessarily him that did it, but it was to his benefit if they were still alive.
Yeah,
because
he still had a stake in the
right. He could maintain his claim on Virginia, and they only declared White's son-in-law, Ananias. They declared him dead so that his son, John, could inherit the estate. So, you know, that was what was important at the time. Raleigh did make a transatlantic trip, in 1595, and he said that he was going there to search for the settlers, but then he later admitted that it was to search for El Dorado.
Yeah, the city of gold.
So, priorities, I guess. He did sail past the Outer Banks on his return, but claimed that weather kept him from making landfall, which is not, unlikely. And again, in 1602, he funds a mission to the Outer Banks, again under the pretense of searching for the lost colonists, but in this case, it was to take advantage of the rising price of sassafras.
Sassafras.
I like saying that.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, he directed the crew to harvest it further south of Croatoan Island, and he purchased the ship, and he guaranteed the sailors wages, so that basically they wouldn't take jobs from other people.
Yeah.
When they did finally reach Croatoan Island, again the weather just fucked them completely. And then in 1603, Raleigh is implicated in plans to overthrow the king and is arrested on treason. So at that point, now he's got no claim on Virginia anymore.
There goes that.
Yeah. And then we have Bartholomew Gilbert, who he tried, but the weather fucked him up. They did end up forced ashore, but they did not specify the location, and apparently Gilbert was killed by natives. I can't imagine why. The rest of his team returned to England. Then 1607 to 1609, John Smith.
Good old John Smith.
Yes.
Smithy.
There's just so much, and I like...
Yeah. See, that's when I was like, okay, I know if I don't know.
Yeah, I know, right? But this was kind of interesting, too, because there was a lot of...
now, Jamestown is credited with being the first successful.
Yes. So that was settled in 1607. But then John Smith was captured by the natives, and then he met with their leader, and...
Powhatan, right?
Yeah, we'll go with that. Powhatan, yeah, sure. Powhatan.
I'm just thinking of the Disney movie. I think that's what it was.
Maybe. And then his brother, who I'm not even going to try and say this one.
That's what it's.
Opechancanough.
Yeah.
Opechancanough. Okay, we'll go with that. Listen, I learned a little bit of Mohegan because Matt had to do a project for school, and it was like right around the time that Mohegan Sun. No, it's not.
Oh.
But it was right around the time that Mohegan Sun had opened, and they literally had like actual sentences that they had translated, into English.
Huh.
And it was very interesting, and I learned how to say it. I'm not going to do it now. But anyway,
I'm fluent in Pig Latin.
I'm sure you are. We should do an episode entirely in Pig Latin.
Not after the cocktail.
That would be way funnier. We should do like a dual one, right? So we should do one completely normal, and then do the other one in Pig Latin with the tens unit. Remember that thing I sent you? Yeah. So anyway, what was interesting about his case was the natives that he met with actually had described people that were a place rather where a lot of people were wearing European style clothing outside of Jamestown. So there's a good chance, and that was an area called Anone, Anone, which also featured walled houses, which was not something that was typical for natives, right? So clearly there was the possibility that the people who were in Roanoke were now somewhere else. So he goes back to the colony, Jamestown. He makes arrangements with other native leaders to investigate another place reportedly to be inhabited by men in European dress. So there's a couple of them. And then there was a map drawn up, and they labeled all the different villages. And what I thought was interesting, so the map also featured a place called, and here we go again, Packrackinick. God damn it. With a note indicating, here remaineth 4 men clothed that came from Roanoke to whatever this other place. Yeah, they did. So Smith sends this letter back to England. He planned to explore, but ended up in a dispute with another native.
I feel like I'm not even
going to try. We'd be here all night just trying to get me to pronounce these names. And you're not helping me.
I'm not even going to try.
So then in 1609, word reaches England's Royal Council for Virginia that the colonists had been murdered by natives, although that source was unknown. So, here we start with the rumors. Then the council in England, England's Royal Council, orders Jamestown colony to relocate to a position that was closer to assumed copper mines, but also close to where 4 of Raleigh's colonists were supposedly being held by a local tribe. And again, the orders were sent with, because, no email. They were sent with a man by the name of Thomas Gates, but they were shipwrecked.
Gates!
Yeah. They were shipwrecked at Bermuda and didn't arrive at Jamestown until May of 1610, which was a time called the Starving Time, which was the winter of 1609 and 1610.
And they had a climatologist and an archaeologist.
Yes, I had that too.
Yes, they found that actually that coincides with that time. They found that was a dry period.
Yes.
In the agriculture.
But what's insane is that of the 500 residents, only 61 survived.
That makes sense. starving time.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, right?
Horrible, but makes sense.
So 1610 to 1612 is William Strachey. He backs up Smith's details that were in the map, but he also added some details about the slaughter at Roanoke. And again, but a lot of this is conjecture.
It is, but I mean, honestly, there probably was a slaughter at Roanoke at some point because there were skirmishes back and forth.
But we just don't know who it was.
Yeah, and when it was.
And a lot of people landed there.
Yeah.
So
and it could have been too that maybe there was a slaughter, and maybe that's when they left.
Right.
And went to Croatoan.
Right, and it could have been maybe they did the slaughtering. We don't know.
Look at you.
We don't know. We weren't there.
We were not there, and that's the problem with all of this.
Like 500 years ago. So Strachey suggested that the lost colonists had spent 20 years living peacefully with a tribe beyond Powhatan territory. And then this other, somebody I'm not going to pronounce, another native claimed that...
Roanoke.
This one?
Oh no, now I'm dead here in my head.
Woonsakawa carried out the...
Yes!
Right? That's not too
bad. We're getting rid of this. All right.
So there was like some unprovoked attack at the recommendation of priests, and it was just like there was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of, and that's why, like I said, like there's so many different tribes and then different colonists and people moving all around, and yeah. So I'm just gonna like move on from that one because it just gets like really crazy, but and it's not even like it's really pertinent to Roanoke per se. I did put it in there, but it's really not that exciting, I promise. What I did find interesting is that Strachey believed
I was just reading that, and I was like, that makes absolutely no sense.
Powhatan religion was inherently satanic, and the priests of
they can't worship Satan unless they believed in
God.
God, yeah,
which they didn't,
because then it had to be also partly Christian, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Because they weren't, because they were polytheistic. So this is all, I'm very annoyed.
But apparently, this jerk advocated, of course, for England to facilitate the Powhatan's conversion to Christianity. What a surprise. And then, so they believed that these people had murdered all the colonists in Roanoke. But again, speculation.
There weren't anyone either.
No. The whole thing is just like, it's just everybody going there. I think it was just, they wanted money for their expeditions.
Yes.
And they did it under the pretense of looking for...
And religion.
Right.
Yeah.
And they did it, like they got the money from England to go look for the colonists. But that wasn't really why they went there.
No.
Because they just wanted shit for themselves. So then there was Samuel Purchas. Basically, he just wanted England to annihilate every native on the land. Like, that was literally what he advocated for. Because he said that, they killed the colonists in Roanoke because nobody can find them. So, of course, it's by default. And then the last one was John Lawson, who visited Croatoan and encountered the Hatteras people. And this one was interesting because...
Oh, yes.
He was impressed with the English culture that the Hatteras people kind of had... Adopted, thank you. And so some of the people of the area reported that several of their ancestors had been white, some with gray eyes, which supported his claim that the colonists had assimilated with the native community once they lost hope of further contact from England. So, because remember, this is now in the 1700s, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously could be ancestors. And then I had the archaeological evidence, right? So, basically, and I literally wrote, the long and the short of it is, they don't have any evidence.
No, I think literally they found some, like, pottery that was...
no bones.
No, they found pottery that was, like, used in London at like, a certain time. And that was really it.
But again, and that was one of the things I was reading, is that depending on when those searches took place, because it was like a landing strip.
Right, and then it could have been a shipwreck, it could have been anything.
It could have been people that came after. It could have been any one of these searchers. It could have been people before that colony showed up. So, there's any number of explanations for that. And they said the only burial sites located were Native American, but it's also quite possible that any evidence may be underwater, given that erosion has cost the area 928 feet since the time of those missing colonists.
Yeah.
That's a lot. So it's a good possibility that, they probably didn't bury bodies close to, like, super close. Maybe not that far away. But, like, if it was disease or whatever, and you're in an unknown place, and who knows what encounters they had with animals digging up bodies.
They could have burned them, too.
That's also true. And then this is where I had the climate researchers. So they had said also between the starving time and also at the time when the colonists had arrived between 1587 and 1589, this is crazy, they were able to determine from the growth rings of a bald cypress tree that 1587 was the worst growing season in the entire 800-year period of the tree's growth.
I love trees.
I know. They tell a very good story. And it says these findings were consistent with the concerns the Croatoan expressed about their food supply. Mm. And then that's when I, in my notes, literally wrote, Donner pre-party. Well, I mean, think about it, right?
Pre-party? Yeah.
So it's also possible that if during that period they were experiencing so much food scarcity,
maybe they ate each other.
Yes. Right?
That's why there was no bones.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, maybe we just came up with a whole other theory.
Oh,
we figured out what happened.
I think it'd be much more
colonists.
haunted if that's what.
Maybe. Although it seems to, like a lot of the haunting stuff that I did find really didn't have much to do
with
the colonists.
Yeah, it was like
a bike.
I feel like it had to do with stuff that people that settled later.
Yes. Yeah. Did you find the bike one?
No.
Oh, okay. So
I found the Lady in Black.
I don't think I have that one, so this will be good. Okay. I have a multitude.
And as soon as I saw it, I was like, bicycle.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry. ADHD in full swing today.
So I found this little fun tidbit, right? Mm-hmm. The oldest thriving grapevine in America actually grows on Roanoke Island.
That's awesome.
And so
I want to go see it.
I know, right? So when the English explorers first arrived on Roanoke Island in the 16th century, the island was said to be covered with wild grapes, right? And they call it the mother vine.
So do they have wineries down there?
I'm sure they do.
Interesting.
Again, I didn't leave my hotel, so I don't know.
God, you missed it.
I know. I was alone.
So what? That's the best time to do things.
And I was doing schoolwork. Yeah, I literally brought my watercolor. I brought my watercolor supplies across like 4 or 5 states. Yeah. So I do want to go back though. But they do believe that the mother vine is at least 400 years old. And it's also relevant to some of the paranormal stories. Because a lot of the stories at least that I found, took place on Mother Vineyard Road. So, I thought it was interesting. Do you want to start with your paranormal activity and then?
Sure. Okay, so I have to remember because I didn't write it down. I just read it.
You bad girl. Bad girl.
My tiny little notes. So the Lady in Black apparently, she was only there for 4 days, but she apparently made a huge imprint.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, when she was alive or
dead?
Okay. Just making sure.
She sounds like from the 18th century, like a widow in mourning. She had the poofy dress and the veil, the black veil over, and she would follow men back to, I guess it was either a B&B or an inn, follow men back to their rooms.
Oh, would she now?
And say things to them right before, escort them back to their room, let's go in or blah blah blah, and it would freak them out, and they would turn around and she'd be gone. And she did this for 4 days, and then she was gone, and then apparently then people the next town over started seeing her.
Really?
Yeah. I'm that's pretty awesome.
Interesting.
I want to haunt the shit out of people like that. And then I had heard things about a lady in white in the cemetery, which is always classic.
Yep.
Yeah. And people in cemeteries, stuff.
Well, people hang out there and they're spooked out.
And I did hear about a lady in a bar.
I don't know if I have that one.
But that's I feel like we have that here too. A lady in a bar that is in the bathroom and she's crying, and that's really it.
The pretty standard.
Yeah.
Standard stuff. Yeah.
And nothing that was
I like that chick in the white. That's I mean
the black. Yeah. That's
one of those colors.
Roanoke. Yeah.
That isn't really a color.
I really thought it'd be more interesting Roanoke. So I'm a little disappointed.
I am too. I mean I did, like I said, I did get some interesting reports. To be fair, I did kind of copy and paste just because there's no better way to relay a story than through literally what the person experienced, right? So the reports of a bicycle bell, but no bicycle.
Bring, bring, that little...
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read this because it's literally the story this young man told. I think he's 19, and obviously grew up in the area. He said, "The one night that I remember we were hiding in the bushes and we saw it. Ellison said, talking fast. It was a man on a bike wearing raggedy clothes, but he had this glow. When we saw it, we just immediately said, dude, it's the Ghost Rider. And then years later, when he was in 11th grade, his friends insisted on going down Mother Vineyard to find what they called the Potato Hut, where slaves were reputed to be buried. Now, I hadn't heard anything about this prior to this conversation. We were just walking and strolling, and then Ellison paused and took a breath. We heard a bike bell. This is 3 or 4 in the morning. It was a very urgent sound. It sounded like it was getting closer. It was right on us. None of us turned. The reaction was just to run. So we ran down to my road, walked to my house, and just sat there. Right then, I remembered the bike bell. I felt like nothing could protect me. So it was like an eerie, I guess, feeling like somebody was chasing them.
Weird.
Then there's the story of the screaming cat. But this is not an ethereal cat. It is a real cat. They saw a screeching cat that was repeatedly flinging itself around on a nearby hill as if it was being attacked by something.
Oh, jeez.
But there was nothing there.
Maybe it was like a moth it was playing with.
Why would it be screaming, though?
Cats are weird. I don't know.
I mean, they are weird, but generally my cats, I mean, I have had quite a few of them, and they don't usually scream when they attack bugs.
I did see a cute YouTube video where they had like a little squishy snowman, and they threw it at the ceiling, and the cat went, "Ah!"
I saw that too. Oh, Lord. Yes. So, obviously, these kids are watching this whole thing unfold, absolutely stunned, and all of a sudden the cat just rights itself, takes off to the foot of the dock above the bulkhead, and then all of a sudden this weird, like, black blob slithers out from where the hell is. And that's not the only time. There's a couple of blobs.
Ew.
But not, like, it's like a shadow blob. Oh. Not, like, formed.
Okay.
Not, like, greasy, weird.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like,
No, not that kind of blob. So this is Chris Haddon. He's the 19-year-old student, right? He's telling, I mean, he has quite a few stories. It was the summer before last, out on a dock. We call it the ghost dock or the plankton dock, which are two very different things. Just saying. And it was about midnight, but there was enough moonlight to clearly see. Out of the shadows, a darker shadow slid out. It was like a blob. Mm-hmm. It slid down the hill and, like, toward the north from the docks. And then he said he pointed to the bulkhead and the field sloping up from the sound. So, like, that's where he had seen it. And it's hard to envision without knowing exactly what that area looks like.
Yeah.
But he said it was a 2-dimensional shape, about 5 feet in diameter, and fast-moving. And apparently he saw it, and then he turned to his friend, and his friend looked at him and just said, I think that was a ghost. Like, they both saw it at the same time, so it wasn't just, like, one person.
Yeah.
It was 2 people. They also report, not necessarily him, but multiple people have reported, like, a violent knocking on wooden gates. And, like, the docks. No, well, apparently, and it was, I think this kid as well. He said they were, like, kind of hanging out at the docks or whatever. He has hands on the dock, the top ledge, and something hit it from, like, underneath hard enough to, like, his hands, like, bounced off.
Oh, interesting.
So, I mean, if a boat hit it, I think they would know. I feel like you'd know that.
Maybe it could be a buoy.
This is true. So this one was interesting, and it was, again, like, I've told you 1,000 times, I'm not a fan of going through, like, the shows, right?
Yeah.
But this was actually a paranormal group that did an investigation there. The Carolina Ghost Hunters, and their investigation was on Mother Vineyard Road. Mm-hmm. And they used dowsing rods, which I have dowsing rods. It's one of those things that, you know, it's like you're using your own hands, and it's valuable because...
Well, yeah, you can rely on yourself. I don't know if I rely on anyone else using them.
Right. And even then, like, for yourself, it's like you don't sometimes realize... Think about it. When we would go on investigations, we didn't realize, 1, how much we whispered.
Oh, my God.
2, how much noise we make other than talking.
And even we would try to tag something if we said, like, oh, I just sneezed, or, oh, I whispered, or we still missed so much.
I don't know if you guys are picking this up on the microphone. My stomach...
Oh, is it?
Is
I don't hear it, so it's probably...
But, you know, if you have your recorder, like, let's say you're sitting, right? Mm-hmm. Cross-legged on the floor, and you have your recorder in your lap, right? It's going to pick that up.
It gets a dog barking, like, half a mile away. It's
right.
Ridiculous.
So you don't realize...
Don't talk shit about anyone in an investigation in another room.
Yeah.
Because they'll hear it.
you just don't realize how much shit this thing picks up.
Yeah.
Right? And how much noise you make.
Sure.
Between, like, clearing your throat, sniffling.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my point was, even with dowsing rods, like, you hold them, right? And you think you're perfectly still. But you're not. Like, there's no way to be that still.
Right.
Right? So, you know, it's like anything else. You got to kind of take everything with a grain of salt. However, they did use them. One investigator stood with their back to the water and started to ask questions. Then they heard like a clicking, which I thought was kind of creepy.
Yeah.
And a rustling sound coming from the bushes.
But you have clicking frogs down there.
Yeah. So I mean, and it could have been an animal, to be fair.
Yeah.
Right. But she did say that she had one of the most intense experiences ever during an investigation. And this is a direct quote. She said, "This humongous energy came rolling out from those woods. It was all over me. This energy seemed to fill the whole road. It was weird. It felt old, really old. The energy kept building and building, getting stronger and stronger. And the investigator was convinced that she was about to experience like a manifestation."
We know what that's like.
Yeah.
Where it's like something's gonna happen and then nothing happens. You're like,
The fuck?
yeah.
But apparently, while they're doing this investigation, and while she has this feeling, a fucking car shows up, breaking the electromagnetic field, and of course the feeling was gone. So, I mean, land, the inhabitants, like all of this area is old.
Yeah.
And, well, it may not be as old as like Vikings,
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, go that far back necessarily. I mean, we don't know. Could. We don't know who's, like, we came here and there were people here.
Right.
Do we know exactly how far back they go? Come on, history human.
Oh, tens of thousands of years. Yeah, they probably crossed the, what is it? Fuck.
Well,
it's not the, I want to say, where's my map? Fuck, I used to have a map. It's not the, is it the Bering Strait? It's not the Bering Strait. It's that little the thing from Alaska to Asia before it's separated. That they crossed from there into America. That's like tens of thousands of years.
Right. And then, well, okay.
And then you also have the ones that came
the
from
Aztecs.
Yeah, so let's say from the south all the way up.
Right.
So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when you think about the history and
Vikings did come here too.
Yeah, they did.
And I think they fucked off pretty fast because I think they got in skirmishes with the natives.
Can't imagine why. But so, you know, there's bound to be a lot of haunting and a lot of activity and things that are happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, some could be attributed to naturally occurring things.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, clearly a woman dressed in black that is not actually there is not that.
Right.
Well, and I think that's the thing for me, like, when it comes to evidence and cases and whatever. If there's, like, an apparition, like somebody physically sees someone.
Yeah.
Or they hear audible sounds, words, things like that. That I put, and not to say that I don't believe, again, I do, but I feel like it's those types of things that you can put a little bit more credence in, right? Because somebody actually saw another human figure that was there, and then the next second was not.
Right.
And they couldn't have gone anywhere else.
Right.
You know, to say I heard a whisper, but can't make out what it was, or you felt a gust of air. It's not that it didn't happen.
Right.
It's not that it isn't paranormal. The problem is that we can't identify it and rule out those natural possibilities.
Yeah.
Especially having not been there.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things that go into that. Because I, you know, obviously if I didn't believe, I wouldn't be doing this. Both the investigating that we did prior and sitting here right now.
Correct.
Because this would be an awful waste of time if I didn't believe in any of this shit. I mean, I like history.
Yeah.
I find this all very interesting, and I'm learning a lot doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's not like I would necessarily, you know, put this much effort into doing a podcast if I didn't believe in the paranormal.
Right.
So, yeah, there's that. But that's all I got.
That's all I got, too.
I hope this was interesting. I did find it interesting. I was disappointed, but it was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny, the
I've heard
patterns
things.
you see because of when people are not prepared.
Yep.
AKA Donner, AKA Roanoke.
Mm-hmm.
When they're not prepared for something and like the natural elements and the natives and all that stuff, what happens.
Well, that's what gets me too is, you know, it's not like by the time they got to white coming here, slightly ironic, you would think that because now they've sent out at least two other parties prior, that they would be prepared with enough supplies and know what to expect with natives and things like that. Like,
I mean, it's
did they
weird.
just have that attitude of?
I think a lot was going on at that time in the world between the couple of the wars that were going on. People were funding that and probably not really interested in funding
Expeditions
the expeditions. And I also think that things were ever changing in the colony, like the relations with the natives. It wasn't communicated fast enough.
Yeah.
So I think there was a lot of factors that played into it. And look, they may have been fine at one point, then all of a sudden disease spread, and then they went through all of their stuff.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get that word out fast enough, and they were too busy fighting a war to even get the money, get the supplies, get anything fast enough. Then they get there, there's a hurricane, they have to go back. Like, I think it was just 1,000 different factors. And they also wanted to get people over there because the Spanish had people down in the...
Yeah.
And,
they needed to stake their claim.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just feel like, like you said, being unprepared, right? Like, and by the third time, I would think you should have been prepared. But clearly...
there are too many factors, I think, to be completely prepared for something like that. It's like going to Mars.
Well, I was going to say they should have left more military, but then again, they
needed the military.
Spanish-Anglo War, so there's that. Anywho, do we know what we're doing for next? Have we thought about it?
I have things on the list. And I do want to have Bill on and
I was just going to say that. I think we should do that because I know he's got a lot going on.
Yes, I think we should do that. So, but I don't think we could do that here because I don't think three of us will fit right here.
That is true. We may have to bring that to my house. I'm not really sure we're going to do that either. Because there's not a whole lot of space.
Yeah.
I mean, I could probably make it work.
And that would be Herb Baumeister.
Yes.
Who is super interesting serial killer.
Mm-hmm. So we're kind of, it's funny, like we do these weird like snippets of or like groupings of things, right? Because it's been a lot of like
history,
early American history that we've been doing.
Now we're popping into the 70s, 80s.
Yeah, and then we're also going back to more of like the super serial killer because that's where we started.
Yeah, I love
this. Has been more of like history versus crime,
yeah,
right? So I think we should do that. I think that would be good.
Yeah, and I would love to have Bill back on.
Well, Bill is just funny.
Bill's awesome.
And then all this.
And we have to think of a fruity cocktail. I love you, Bill.
Well, again, so we try to keep our cocktails or drinks to like some relevance.
Mm-hmm.
So we should find.
Well, our Baumeister would drug the drinks.
Very important. So we have to see if we can find.
I want to see if I could even figure out what kind of drink he would give.
Yeah.
Bill might know. I know he likes that.
Yeah, he was like fascinated. Like this is his person.
Yes. So maybe we'll make him just do the whole thing and we'll sit there and drink.
We get to take a break for a little while. I am sure he would not mind.
No, he'll just.
Yeah. We'll figure something out. I think that would be good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So inform him.
I will inform him. I have informed him. I just haven't told him more
we're gonna
specifically
have to
what.
Figure out where.
I'm sure we can figure out something.
Where's your basement?
Yeah, no, we no. Just no. I mean, worst case scenario, I can just send everyone out of the house and we can sit at my kitchen table.
Yeah, we can do that.
Right?
And I'll have Luna.
Yes. And then
all
the lunatic cats. Well, the one lunatic cat, the other one who's just a little goofy, and the other one who doesn't give a shit about anything. So, there's that.
And Looney Luna, who I love.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I think that does it for today.
Just about does it.
Yes, and then off to doing homework and things we don't really want to do.
I think I'm going to paint my last canvas and cry.
While you paint it or afterward?
Both. Because I'm really sad about it.
Are you going to use your tears to paint?
I might do some watercolor. And then it's the walls until Friday when I get paid.
Hey, listen. It makes it interesting. You should stand up and do one.
No.
Anyway. Moving right along.
God forbid. If I could do the Michelangelo and just lay down and do it. Which is a thing actually we do with the kids. We put paper under the desk and lay down and do it.
Really?
Yeah. It's fun. They like it. History.
Yes. So, maybe one episode we can just start showcasing your art.
Take it. Fuck.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go home and do a paper and watch hockey.
And I would totally help you with the paper if I knew any of that stuff.
Like
I would do it for you.
Not sure I know what the fuck I'm doing either, so it's okay.
And then soon I'm gonna come over and you're gonna teach me hockey.
Yes. I think that's not this week, the following week. I think we had discussed.
Yes.
So yeah.
Do it.
Teach you hockey.
Grr.
Grr. Watch it. There won't be anything exciting happening.
Probably not. That's fine. I love sports, so as soon as I get the rules down, I'm good.
Yes, and there's a lot of them.
And I like the fights.
Yeah, there's not many of those. Although there was one really well. They've kind of tried to like stop that because things were getting out of control.
Baseball's the best when there's fights.
Oh no, there's a fight that happened not that long ago where this one guy got so mad and he literally took the guy and was going on the ice. Like I've never seen this guy that go that batshit crazy.
Nice.
It was fantastic. Maybe not so much for the guy that was getting smacked into the ice, but yeah, I like it when. So we had this one player, Zdeno Chara, who was like 7 feet tall, and I'm not even joking. Like with skates on, he was like 7 feet, right?
Nice.
So when people were trying, it was like one of those where like you